guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rebecca and I am a stay-at-home mom and an online reseller. And it's been a while since I've posted a video. I hope everyone had a really good Christmas or holidays. But if you can't tell by the baby bottle peeking up here, we have a baby. So I think my last video was packing my hospital bag. And this is going to be my birth story and introducing my newest baby. So she was supposed to be asleep right now, but in true baby fashion, she woke up right as I was about to record. So we're feeding her a bottle and she's probably just going to hang out here with us. I'm trying to keep her face out of the shot till like the end, and then I'll more so introduce you, but who knows with babies how that's going to go. So we're just going to talk about my birth story. If you haven't been following along, then this was my third pregnancy. And it's considered like my fourth pregnancy. I had a chemical miscarriage. I don't really count it, but anyway, it's my third like full pregnancy and baby. So my third child, and the pregnancy definitely was a little rough. You can go back and watch like all my pregnancy update videos. I won't go into everything, but basically we ended the pregnancy with like the plan to have just go into labor naturally, and my plan was to have an unmedicated labor and delivery, which is what I did with my second child. And yeah, we were just kind of playing the waiting game. So she ended up being born 4 days past her due date. That is the latest any of my children have been born. My first one was 3 days early. My second one was 2 days late. This one was 4 days late. And I know that, the due dates are just like a best guess, best estimate anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But I think when you're that pregnant, you're just really waiting to deliver. So for me, it was kind of tricky because my due date was 2 days before Thanksgiving. So there was a really big, like, trying to figure out what we should do for Thanksgiving. Should we have people at our house? Should we go somewhere? Like, we weren't sure because, we could end up 45 minutes from the hospital. But, typically 45 minutes is enough time to get to a hospital, unless you have like crazy fast deliveries or, some concern. But we ended up being able to do all of our Thanksgiving plans. We went to my parents' house. We went to my in-laws' house. You got to see some family members. So that was really nice. I just kept joking that I guess this baby just really wanted to have Thanksgiving dinner via me in utero. And I don't blame her because, Thanksgiving dinner is delicious. And she got 2 of them that day. So anyway, I had been having contractions that were more than Braxton Hicks, but I'd been having them for at least a week before her due date. And I was really like, you get in that part where it's like, could today be the day? Is this the day that maybe I'm going to be going into labor? And you always hope it is, but none of those really worked out. But I had an OB appointment, it was with a midwife at my OB practice. We have OBs and midwives. So this was like the day before my due date, I believe. And I did have them do a cervical check, not because I know it doesn't really mean you're going to be going into labor anytime soon or anything like that, but just like peace of mind for myself. It's more like, I hope all these contractions I've been having for like the last week or so have been doing something, especially since it's my third baby. And it would be kind of nice to be like, oh, I'm already like 3 centimeters. And, so knowing when I start, really going into labor, feeling like, when you go to the hospital, I'm already 3 centimeters in, that'd be great. So I did have them check me just for that. And she was like, you're maybe 1 centimeter dilated. And I was like, oh my gosh, that made me so sad. And she said my cervix was like really high. Like, it was actually a rather painful check. I kind of regret having done it. Just because it was so uncomfortable because my cervix was so high. Like, she really had to kind of get in there to be able to measure it. So that was not great. But yeah, so I was a little bit sad coming out of that appointment. Like, everything was fine. Baby seemed healthy. I was healthy, but it was just like, I wish I had been dilated more to start. But that was not the case. I don't know what my hair is doing here, but this is going to be an annoyance the whole video, I can already tell. So that was, I think, the day before my due date, because my due date was on like a Tuesday, I believe. Thanksgiving was a Thursday. So I think I had an appointment that Monday before. Yeah, and that's basically all it was. So nothing had changed until the day after Thanksgiving, which was Friday. This would have been the 24th of November. And I was having contractions again, starting at like 4:30 in the afternoon. I felt like I could kind of time some of them. So I was using my pregnancy app, which I use Ovia, and I was timing them, but they weren't like, some of them weren't super consistent. But some of them were like I was like making dinner. So I was still able to like do stuff through them, but I could kind of figure out like a start and end point. They were at least strong enough that I was able to do that. So that's why I was kind of timing them. So that evening I was like, I kind of feel like, maybe tonight could be the night that we go in. Both of my other babies, we ended up getting to the hospital around midnight. So I kind of was anticipating the same this time around. I was anticipating that we would probably be going to the hospital at night again. And I thought it was going to be that night. But it still wasn't quite close enough. Like the contractions weren't like close enough for me to really be like, yeah, I think we need to like go to the hospital, or we should call my parents to come get the older kids. So I was like, well, if this is early labor, I should probably try to get some sleep, because I'm always super tired during labor because it was always overnight. So I tried to lay down and get some sleep. And what was happening is when I would lay down, my contractions would space out to like 10 to 30 minutes apart. I was still having them, but they were spacing out a lot more, but they were more intense. So I was actually like dozing off, like sleeping in between them. And I even got to a point where I was like, if this is labor, then I want to get up, get moving, and hopefully that'll like help keep things more regular, like my contractions more regular and closer together. So I did get up and kind of like rolled around on my ball, and did some stuff like that. And it was like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. or something. And I was just exhausted. I was so tired. So it was like, it didn't seem like anything was happening. So I went back to bed, and my husband was already asleep, of course, at this point. As soon as I said, it might be tonight, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go to sleep, because he gets tired too, being up all night while I'm laboring and things like that. So yeah, went back to sleep, and still was just like waking up essentially every 10 to 30 minutes, having a contraction while laying there in bed, and then like dozing off back to sleep until the next morning, like 7 or 8 a.m. or so. And to get through them, I was using the comb method. So I had like the little plastic combs. I honestly don't think that it really did anything for me. That's just my personal experience. I know a lot of people like them. I don't think it did anything for me. I don't know. I'm not having any more kids, but if I were, I probably wouldn't use them again. But other people definitely could have different experience. I didn't feel like it did anything for me. So anyway, the next morning, like I said, I woke up somewhere around 7 or 8. My husband woke up earlier with the big kids so I could rest and sleep. And that morning, the contractions were getting stronger, and sometimes they were 3 minutes apart, sometimes they were 5 minutes apart, sometimes they were 7 minutes apart. But they definitely felt more intense, and like I was starting to have to like stop and pause through them. So I was like, okay, this feels like what it felt like with my other kids. Like this feels like labor. And so we called my parents, and they came and got the big kids. And then I was like, well, if we're going to be going to the hospital, I'm going to want some lunch. Like it was kind of later now. It was probably like 11 a.m. or so, somewhere 11 or noon. So I was like, I'm going to eat before we go in. So I made like a bagel and egg sandwich and had some chocolate milk, which is a pretty heavy meal for right before you go into labor, or, if you're in labor before you have a baby. Probably not the most advisable. I didn't get sick or anything from it, but I'll talk about that a little bit going forward. So anyway, I ate that, and then I was like, okay, I guess I'll call the OB office now. So I called the OBs, and it was a Saturday, so they obviously weren't in the office. I went to like their call center or whatever, and the person that they said was on call was this doctor that I had never heard of. It was like a male doctor, and my practice has all females, female OBs and midwives. So it was some doctor that I was like, okay, they're like, well, they'll have him give you a call in the next 30 minutes or so. I was like, all right. And I'm like, I got off the phone with them, and I was like, I don't, like, do they have the right person? Because I don't know who this doctor is that they're talking about. And I was also like, I don't really, like, I kind of waited till I was like really sure that we had to go to the hospital to call them. It was kind of more of a courtesy call, because I was like, I plan to go to the hospital at this point anyway. But I was like, I don't really feel like waiting 30 minutes. We were all like literally completely packed and ready to go. So I decided to call the hospital's maternity ward, which my OB office told me I could do that too. And I was like, hey, I just called my OB's office. They said this doctor's on call. I don't know who that is. And they're like, oh yeah, he's moonlighting from like a bigger hospital. It's in the same hospital system. I don't exactly know what moonlighting is, but either way, he was working at the hospital I would be delivering at. He was the OB on call. So I was like, I never met him. I didn't know anything about him. I was like, oh, okay. So that explains why I didn't know who they were talking about. And I was like, so I called them, and they said they're going to call me back in the next 30 minutes. I was like, I just don't really feel like I should wait. I think I'm just going to come in. They're really cool about it. They're like, okay. And they asked me some questions like, how far apart my contractions are, which pregnancy is this, and things like that, so they could get ready for our arrival. So it is a small hospital too. I kind of mentioned this before, but we live in a rural area. So this hospital has 4 labor and delivery rooms, and I think something like 8 or 12 postpartum rooms. I don't know. They're never full, but yeah, they only have 4 labor and delivery rooms. So it's very small, and I love it. I love that it's a nice small hospital. But we do have bigger resources nearby. So with that call having been made, we decided to go into the hospital. So my husband and I ended up checking in there around 1 p.m. And it was definitely one of those things where literally halfway through the hospital parking lot, we had to stop because I was having a contraction. And it was like, when the contraction's over, you're like, okay, try to walk as fast as you can to get to the door so you're not stopping in the middle of a parking lot again. But we checked in, and the staff there is just really amazing. I cannot say enough good things about them, but they're super nice. And when we were checking in, they didn't admit me at first. They wanted to kind of go over things and see how my labor actually was going and if I was truly in labor. So they put me on, I had to lay down in the bed or whatever. They put me on the monitors, and they were like, what they were seeing was, my contractions were only coming every 10 minutes or so, which is exactly what was happening when I was laying down in bed at home. And I was like, but when I would get up, I was like, they were much closer together. So, yeah, I didn't feel like they were getting an accurate picture of what I was going through because I was sitting or laying in a bed when they were having the monitors on. And I did kind of explain that to them, but yeah. So anyway, they did a cervical check, and they were like, so you're 1 centimeter, and my heart dropped. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I've been laboring since 4:30 yesterday. I've been having contractions for a week, and it's my 3rd baby. And with as strong as my contractions felt, I was like, I cannot believe that I'm only 1 centimeter. I was so sad. And they're like, yeah, we might be sending you back home. You can labor at home. And I was like, with how intense they felt, I didn't feel comfortable being at home. And they were like, well, we can also have you, walk around. They were very kind about it. It was very still kind of up to me what I wanted to do. But they were like, well, we can have you walk around for a bit and see if that does anything, and then we'll check you again. I was like, okay. So yeah, that was around 1 p.m. So they checked me again about, 2:30 or 3 o'clock, I think. Because we sat there for a while with the nurses and going through all the, paperwork kind of stuff. And then my husband and I walked around the hallways a little bit, and they had like the birthing ball I sat on for a little bit and things like that. So all that kind of took a while. But so they came back around 3, I think, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and checked me again. And they're like, okay, well, you're 4 centimeters and you have a bulging bag of waters. And I was like, thank goodness. I mean, I was like, holy cow, 3 centimeters. And like, I mean, at that point, it was like probably an hour and a half. I was like, that seems really fast. And yeah, I was surprised, but I was excited because I was like, okay. And they're like, so you're not going to probably be going back home today. And I was like, good. Okay, we're ready to get this baby born. I don't want to go back home. So then we had to start all the admission stuff. They got me admitted, and then they wanted to start an IV, just like a saline lock, not actually hook me up to fluids, but I have issues with anemia. I had a postpartum hemorrhage with my last birth, with my last delivery, and I had with the anemia I had like low blood cell counts. So they wanted to at least have saline lock in place, and thank goodness we did do that. It took them 3 or 4 different sites of trying to get an IV on me to get one. They actually ended up having to call in somebody from the emergency room, a nurse from there, to come up who is like more skilled, I guess, in giving them. They said I had very tiny veins. So it was a struggle. It honestly hurt more than the contractions. I'm digging around in my arm trying to get a line, and yeah, it was not fun. But I'm glad we got it, because when I was postpartum after delivery with my last baby, we really struggled trying to get a line started to help with the hemorrhaging that I was experiencing. You guys are going to get to look at the back of her for a little bit. She just had her bottle, so I'm going to keep her upright for a little while. So they finally got a saline lock. Well, actually, no, they were trying for a while, and did take a little while for someone from the ER to come up to get a line started on me. But during all this time while I'm laboring, my main source of like pain control, I guess, I talk about this in my other videos. There's like, it's gonna be hard to point. There's a pressure point in the webbing of your hand right here, like between your thumb and your first finger. And what we did in my last labor and did in this one that really helped is that my husband would just kind of take his thumb, like squeeze and massage it a little bit during my contractions. And that really, really helped. So that's exactly what we did this time. Every time I'd have a contraction, I'd be like, come over here, like hurry up. And he'd come over and grab my hand. If he was in a different spot. He was beside me most of the time, but just in case, he had walked to the other side of the room or something. And then the other big thing I was doing all the time was going to the bathroom, which happened with my other two. And with my other two, while I was in early labor, essentially, this is kind of TMI, but essentially my system kind of cleared itself out as far as bowel movements and stuff go early on. So I never had that like poop on the table thing that people talk about, because there wasn't anything left in there. But I was experiencing that like clear out the day before that evening, like when I had started having the contractions. So by this time, remember that sandwich I had said I had before we went into the hospital and the chocolate milk, I kept feeling like I had to go to the bathroom and have a bowel movement like the entire time, which is really concerning for me, because they always say, when, if you feel like you have to poop, tell the nurses, because that usually means you're like, feel like you have to push. And I'm like, well, I felt like I had to poop the entire time because I was stupidly had a massive sandwich right before I went in. So that wasn't super helpful. But anyway, I kept going to the bathroom because I kept feeling like I was going to. And there's a reason I think that they call the toilet dilation station because it does help relax like your pelvic floor. And that was just, I spent a lot of time there. Not really doing much, but just spent a lot of time sitting there thinking I was going to have to go to the bathroom. But that probably helped with the dilation, to be honest. So we're doing a lot of that. I really hated the ball. I hated the ball in my other pregnancies and stuff too. So I really didn't use the ball. But my big thing is I would just stand up and kind of like sway while holding onto my husband while he was doing the thing with my hand. So then by the time someone came up, I want to say maybe it was like, I'll say maybe it was like 4:30 at this point. And at this point, I was entering labor land, if you're familiar with that term, where I don't really know what was going on. I don't know what time it was for sure. I didn't really know what was happening. I was just so into the contractions and breathing through them and trying to recover in between them and all that stuff. So at this point, someone came up from the ER to try to get a line, and they wanted to put me back on the monitor. And I was like, oh, I do not want to lay down in a bed because laying down always hurt a lot. So I asked them, I said, do I have to sit down or lay down in the bed? And they're like, no, we can do the monitoring. You can stand here and that's fine. So literally I stood there with my husband. I had the nurse, labor and delivery nurse, putting the monitors on my stomach while I was standing there with him. And then they had, I don't know if it was a nurse or maybe it was like a phlebotomist or something, I'm not sure. Whoever came up to get a line on my other hand while I was standing. They were really amazing. They're super like, just want to help you. So they'll do things however you need to do them, which was great. So that's kind of what we did. They let me be however I need to be comfortable, and then they did what they needed to do. So she was able to get a line finally. And unfortunately it was in my AC, which is like that bend of your elbow essentially, which is not like the most comfortable place. But I didn't really care at that point, honestly. Having the needles or the needle go in, 'cause she got it like first try, was honestly like a better pain relief from the contractions, because you have a sharp pain somewhere else. So yeah, so she got that. They had me on the monitor, and at this point I knew that I was entering transition, because I like started crying, and it was like, I don't know why I'm crying, but I'm just crying, and it feels like you're just like so tired. And this is the point when people usually are like, I can't do this or whatever. For me, I'm like, I can't even really think or talk. Pretty much anything anybody says at this point I would probably agree with, or just be like, okay, because I'm just like not even like, my brain is not functioning really at that point. So I was doing a lot of that low, like groaning sounds at this point too. And the nurses were like, that sounds like baby. They're like, let's get you over to the bed. So I had put in my birth plan, I think, or I don't know. I know I had told them like, and they asked me too while we were there, like what position I wanted to birth in. And with my daughter, my second child, I birthed in all fours, and I liked doing it that way. It felt like easier and more natural for me. So that was my plan for this time too. But they were like, okay, so let's get you on the bed. So I wouldn't have a baby dropped onto the floor, I guess. And they actually had me lay on my side. And I was just, like I said, completely out of it at this point. It was just like whatever they said, okay. And I was like, I need help moving my body at this point. And they kind of put me in a sideline position, and they had me hang my like top leg over the edge of the bed. And almost immediately when they did that, it caused my water to break, which I think is exactly what they were trying to do. So my water broke, which was a really weird experience for me. Because when my water broke, I was already in like one of those giant diapers at the hospital, so it caught it all. And with my second, I was in the shower, so I already had like water running over me. So it was really weird, like to actually feel the water break all over the bed and everything, which is great. And the entire time, like the nurses were like, do you feel like you have to poop? And I'm like, yeah, but I felt like this like for the last several hours. I'm like, I always feel like I have to poop. So it's like, it's not really a good indicator at this point. So, so anyway, my water broke, and then immediately I was like, yeah, I feel like I have to push, or, I want to get into my like birthing position. So I really needed their help doing that, getting from the sideline position to like the all fours position. And I really felt like I had to poop, and then I'm pretty sure that's what happened, is I ended up pooping. So, it's normal. A lot of people poop during birth, but it was one of those things where I could tell the difference. Like I could tell that wasn't baby, but baby immediately followed. So for me, we kind of discussed this, like me and my husband discussed this after the birth. I was like, for me, it felt like I was pushing a lot. Like I felt like like they kept telling me to push and stuff, and I was like, you know, trying to breathe through it, and like, I don't know. It was hard to explain, but I definitely felt like I had to push like several times, not like for hours, but it felt like several minutes and several times. My husband was like, no, you pushed like 2 or 3 times and she was out. I was like, oh, well, it didn't feel that way for me. So maybe they couldn't see how much I was pushing, or like I wasn't pushing effectively some of the times. I don't really know. But yeah, so that's what happened. Pushed her out, and she did cry like almost immediately, which was really good. I mean, with our second, she had the cord wrapped around 4 times, and they had to stimulate her a lot. And then she cried fine. But with this one, I feel like she cried like immediately. Like even me being very out of it, I could hear her cry right away. So that was good. She did have the cord wrapped once, but it wasn't a big deal. They were able to get it off easy. And she had no problems being born. For me, after she was out and they were able to get me like turned over, I did have another postpartum hemorrhage. This one was a little bit greater than with my second, but I still didn't need like a blood transfusion, but we did have just like I had to be hooked up to some IV fluids. And one of my big things I had told them previously, I was like, I don't want any pain meds during delivery. But I said, after delivery, once the baby's out, I'm welcome to all the pain meds. Because for me, with my second, the hardest part, or the most painful part, honestly, was getting stitched up and everything after having given birth. Not so much the stitches themselves, but the lidocaine shot to get the stitches was so painful. And I said I would have loved to have some pain medication before the lidocaine came in to help with that. So they did take that into consideration this time, and they did give me some nitrous oxide. I think it helped a little bit. And then they did give me another pain medication through my IV a little bit later. I don't recall exactly what it was. It wasn't Stadol, but it was something similar. And it kind of just made me out of it. Honestly, I don't think it really helped the pain, but we gave it a try. And yeah, so anyway, I'm not going to go into like everything that happened postpartum, but we ended up healthy. I did have, like I said, had some of that hemorrhage. They did put me on bed rest a little bit because I almost passed out when I got up one of the times, but eventually everything got sorted out. And with the pushing, I was going to say, I felt like I really had to push this time to deliver. Whereas with my second, I felt like I couldn't stop my body from pushing her out if I wanted to. I felt like I had no control over that. This time I felt like I had control, and obviously it hurt to the point that I was like I knew in my head, I was like, I have to get her out because that's the only way it's going to stop like the pain, you know? So I did end up tearing. I've torn my first one I had an episiotomy. Second one I had a tear, and then this one I think it was a 2nd degree tear, which I think is what I had the last time too. Just one I had to stitch up, which was not fun, but we made it through. So she ended up being born at 5:14 p.m. So if you remember our timeline, we arrived at 1 p.m. being 1 centimeter dilated. 4 hours and 14 minutes later, fully dilated, birthed a baby. So once we got there, started dilating very quickly. I can't say what caused that. I was drinking the red raspberry leaf tea and also eating dates for a few weeks beforehand. So whether you believe in that stuff helping or not, I don't know. But I did do that. And yeah, so she came very quickly. She was born at 8 pounds and 1 ounce, which was the biggest baby I've had. My other two were 7'11" and 7'9.5". And she was 20.5 inches long. My other two were both 21 inches. So she was slightly shorter, but heavier than the other kids. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all the stats. So I guess now you get to meet her. She is asleep because she just had a bottle. but she is now, yesterday was Christmas Day, so it was her first Christmas, and she turned 1 month old yesterday because she was born on November 25th. So let me see if I can turn her around here. She's gonna be wiggly. But this is a sweet baby. Her name is Elowyn Rose. Sometimes we call her Ellie. There we go. She is in her little hormonal acne stage, unfortunately, but she is very sweet. Her siblings love her, especially my son. He really, really loves her. I think our middle child's having a little bit of issue sharing. Oh, there we go. Now we're awake. She's got tons of hair. All of my kids have had a ton of hair. Hers is definitely the most. But they've all had this dark brown hair, which we always find funny because my husband and I have much lighter hair. Even the nurse was like, if she was just in a nursery, she's like, I don't think I would have pegged you guys to be the parents because her features were very dark. And she's got blue eyes. They are dark blue right now. Everyone in my family has blue eyes, so they will probably lighten up over time. And just weighed her today. She was 9 pounds and 8 ounces. So she's gaining weight well now. She had a slow start, but all of our kids have had slow starts. And I think she's going to be our first baby that doesn't have acid reflux, which is super exciting to be like a month in and she's not just like spewing everywhere. That was just such a difficult thing to deal with our other kids. So she sleeps very well. She sleeps in her crib. We put her in her crib from day one. She sleeps nice and swaddled up in there. She also loves to snuggle on people. And yeah, she's just been doing really, really well. So I hope that you guys enjoyed listening to this birth story. It's my last birth story. I'm probably going to be switching back to more reselling content, hopefully, coming up now. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments. And I guess we will see you guys in the next video.